Okay, I think we're live now. Lots to discuss, quite obviously, with this ordering for the bombing of Syria, which a lot of people are very, very seriously concerned about. I hope you guys can hear me. Those of you in the chat, let me know if the sound's okay here, because it's late at night here. It's 3:30 in the morning, and yeah, we just got the bad news through about an hour ago. I was woken up to the news that Trump had ordered the bombing of Syria, which is, to say the least, quite troubling. Um, we are we're now at a state of war, and this I don't even know where to begin with this, to be honest with you. This is, yeah, it's kind of an Armageddon stream. This is what it's come down to. Trump has totally betrayed his entire base. Okay, not only has he betrayed his base, he has betrayed the American people by doing this. There are serious concerns that people have about World War III. I understand that. We'll get to that. Now, let's all try, if we can, to be a little bit calmer about the situation, right? I know this is a dire situation, but I need you all to be calm, okay, through this, and we'll try and dissect exactly what is going on and what isn't going on. Now, the fact of the matter is that enough due notice was given. Okay, enough due notice was given to the Russians, to the Iranians, to make sure they cleared out the majority of their personnel. So, on the upside, there's not going to be as serious a ramification as would have been the case if that had not happened. Okay, that's the plus side to it. The downside is the Russians pinned themselves into a corner in this whole situation, though, because they publicly stated multiple times that they would strike if there was even a threat posed to their forces. And obviously, this is quite a serious threat. It should be stressed this is not just America doing this. You have the US, the UK, and France acting together. Like I pointed out in the last video, this only furthers the aims of the Israeli government, unfortunately. Okay, this does not serve the interests of America in any true deep sense. Yes, there are concerns about Hezbollah. Yes, there are concerns about Iran to some degree, but those are primary concerns for the region itself, not directly for America. It doesn't affect America's security in any major way. What has happened now, however, okay, does directly threaten America's security, because the Iranians will see this as an act of aggression. Hezbollah will see this as an act of aggression. All the terrorist groups in that area are going to start attacking the USA now, because they see them as aggressors. Yeah, this is pretty dangerous stuff, to say the least. Could it spark World War III? Yes, it could. Quite literally, that could be one scenario that this develops into. The likelihood of that is 50-50. The likelihood of that is 50-50. I think that the Russians will be clever enough not to go through with that. But the problem here is that both Russia and China have stayed their hand for a very long time with the American aggressions. And I'm not saying this in an anti-American sense, so please don't think that's the case. Don't misunderstand me. But because they've stood by whilst their allies like Iraq were destabilized, whilst Libya was destabilized, all of these things have happened. So they sat by the sidelines while all this was going down, right? They're not going to do that this time around. They're going to respond. There's already reports coming out from inside sources that are saying that the Russians shot down the missiles. They're now even looking at potentially targeting US assets in the region. So The hope is that this can be in some way, shape, or form de-escalated by the Russians, by the Chinese, even by the Iranians. Now, contrary to a lot of the propaganda that's put out there, and I know this because I have actually professionally worked in a capacity where I had to deal with people from Vivac, or what's today known as Vaja, which is the internal security mechanism for Iran. So I understand through working relationships that they are not lunatics. Okay, I know that the Iranians are a very sane, rational people. They don't want World War III either. But Trump has made this mistake. Now, I pointed out at the time. You'll have to excuse me if I'm a little jittery here because I am myself very, very worried about the situation. And I'm sleep deprived as well, so that doesn't help. So you'll excuse me for that. But there are people that said Trump was, you know what I'm talking about here, guys. Okay, there were people that said this is 3D chess, 4D chess, 5D chess, interdimensional chess, underwater backgammon chess with checkers being played on the side or whatever the fuck happened, right? No, I try to explain this to people. I've done my best over the last year or so. Okay, a little longer actually. I've tried my best to tell people what was happening. They didn't want to hear it. Okay, they put cotton wool in their ears and they just didn't want to hear it. Because you see, what happens is people buy into this idea of their God Emperor. Let's put it that way. Okay, it's a delusional frame of mind, but through persuasion techniques which have been used by various people. I'm not saying it was for sinister reasons necessarily, but they've contributed to the problem. Now, that's, obviously it's colored people's vision. Then you had this QAnon stuff for a long, long time. Okay, and you guys will probably know this because maybe you see my posts on other social media. Maybe you see some of the chat and other live streams that I've done. People were asking me to speak about QAnon, right? There's a reason why I didn't. Okay, there's a reason why I didn't. I knew from some of the posts that people were sending to me. I read through this, and because I have an intricate understanding of what is going on. Okay, there are insiders inside the Pentagon that will speak to me directly on a number of matters. I knew that they were full of shit. Okay, the initial Q posts, I'll cover this very briefly, very quickly. Some of the initial Q posts were on point. There was somebody who obviously had some kind of insider information. It could have been somebody playing for the other side. I don't know. It was someone who had access to some classified stuff, which I recognized in the very first posting. Following that, everything that emerged was total disinformation. It was total disinformation, and so I refrained from sharing any of that. Obviously, I tried to dissuade people. It's very hard to do that when people are invested very heavily in something. I tried to dissuade them from believing the nonsense. But the reality has now hit home. Hopefully, the reality is that a lot of folks have been taken for a ride. Okay, they were manipulated by Trump. They were hypnotized to an extent as well, right? Scott Adams, of course, was on the Trump train. He persuaded a lot of people to vote for Trump. He didn't do that from any sinister perspective, but what has happened as a result is that because he's a trained hypnotist as well as a cartoonist, the guy who created Dilbert, right? He did create a kind of a cult around Trump by kind of accident, or sort of on purpose, right? Accidentally on purpose. And when a cult of personality emerges, this is why I've been trying to deprogram people. It's very, very hard to do that. When a cult of personality emerges, the glamour is used that I talked about in previous videos. That stuff is pretty powerful. Again, but there's only so far you can take that. That will hit reality at a certain point in time. It will hit reality. And people's hallucinations will shatter. People's illusions will shatter. So that's the thing of it. Now, as I say, there are upsides to everything as well. So we know that the Iranians are sane actors. We know that the Russians, generally speaking, are sane actors, as are the Chinese. The problem, however, is that many times before, and this was during the Soviet era, mind you, but Putin has the same mindset. That's what worries me about this. The problem is that the former Soviet Union went to launch nuclear weapons approximately 3 times, as far as I can recall. The only thing that stopped that from happening was that someone stepped in the Russian military, who had some ethics, some morals, to say no. This is not a good idea. Now, you know, what can be done at this point? That's the big question. What can be done? But you mustn't. And I'm not saying this as a platitude. You mustn't panic about the situation. Okay. Is Trump a sane actor? People are asking this in the chat. Is Trump a sane actor? No. Okay, I'm going to be blatantly honest with you. Don't I don't think it's a good idea to lie to people, right? Trump is not a sane actor. One of the reasons, why a lot of people inside the intelligence community, or who are former intelligence, supported Trump to a degree, was because of the military generals that were around him, who were stable people. Who the assumption that was made, which has now turned out to be completely wrong, of course, was that Trump could be controlled. His impulsive behaviors could be controlled. He's not a sane actor. He's not a sane person. I have tried to explain this. And again, you hit a wall with people. You hit a wall because they don't want to believe the truth, right? People say they want to believe the truth, but if you actually tell them the truth, they don't want that, because it conflicts with their own personal biases and a number of other things as well. So, yeah. The chemical attack was, well, was there a chemical attack? In my opinion, from a lot of the data that I've had access to, no. It was not a real chemical attack. This was propaganda that was cooked up. Again, this is just my opinion based on what I've read, but it's propaganda that was cooked up by the Israelis to push America into war. The reasons for that are numerous, actually. There are some reasons which are interconnected with some of the stuff that I've talked about in terms of the occult. There are some reasons which are tied into other aspects of this, regarding the financial benefits. There are some reasons to do with the geopolitical strategy in terms of having Syria and then being able to directly face off against Iran, which the Israelis have wanted for a very, very long time. They've wanted to implement their Greater Israel project for years, actually, since the Yinon plan was concocted. So there's many, many things at work, at play here. But yeah, I mean, there's no denying that Trump is, at this point, it's plain and simple. He's a puppet, right? And the puppeteers, well, I've spoken about who they are, what they're all about, what they're trying to achieve. Again, this is the hard work of trying to deprogram people from the nonsense that they've been fed, the bullshit that they were fed. It's like mushrooms, keep them in the dark sort of business. Bolton obviously has not been a good influence, because since he came in, look what's happened, right? The appointment of John Bolton, I spoke about it in the last video. He's a war hawk. He's a neocon. This is somebody who wants the total destruction of the Middle East to serve the agenda. You'll recall he was responsible for PNAC, the Project for a New American Century. There are other people, Scooter Libby, I'm sure you heard the news about him today as well. So he's been pardoned by Trump. He was a warhawk neocon that, again, helped to take America, take Britain into war in Iraq. So when you have these kind of people being pardoned, when you have these kind of people being brought into the inner circle, it's a very, very serious state of affairs indeed. It means it's the end of any kind of real democracy in America. Okay, this is the big tamale, as it were, right? America's finished, and this is it's hard for people to digest this. Okay, it's hard for me to digest this. It was hard for me to digest the idea that Britain itself was finished as well. But this is the case. We have no say anymore in what our governments do. Unfortunately, we have absolutely zero say in that now. All elections are just as Shakespeare noted, the world is a stage, and all elections are essentially staged, aren't they? Let's face it. So yeah, it's a bad time. Part of the thing here is to tap into, in terms of what these power players are doing, the puppeteers, is to tap into people's fear, because they want to see people frightened out their nuts. And there's nothing that will scare people as much as World War III, okay, or the prospect of it. There's nothing that scares people more than that, and that makes it easier to control populations, right? And if they actually implement World War III, well, that's even better for them, because the way they look at things, right? The way they look at things is that they no longer need humanity. Okay, they no longer. This is the great big elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. I've spoken about it time and time and time again. Okay, the way they look at it, they don't need humanity because they've got AI systems now. They've got machines that can do all the work, even the most laborious tasks, even the most dangerous tasks, even the most complex tasks, like these jobs that people have as lawyers, as doctors, and all this business. AI is taking a lot of that over. The technology is already there. It just hasn't been disclosed to the public. One thing I would say with regards to that point as well is that there's a reason why that summit that they held very recently, the World Governance Summit, the World Government Summit, was totally focused on AI and rolling that out. That was them telling you the plan. One thing about these people is that they don't lie. They will always tell you exactly what they're doing, and people dismiss it. See, people are stupid, right? Unfortunately. The mass majority of people are so daft. Yes, the military's automating soldiers. One of the people in the chat has pointed that out. That's correct. Humans don't serve a purpose to the elites anymore at all. So it's okay for they're at a point now where it's okay for them to eradicate humanity. That's the way they look at it. It's very deranged and sick, quite honestly. But hey, it's their bag. So what was I saying? Yes, so the AI systems will replace human beings, and so yeah, they've been seeing what they're going to do, and because people are plugged into the matrix, so to speak, right? Because they're razzle dazzled by the glamour, the propaganda, the charisma of certain people. Well, not really the charisma, but sometimes that's misused too. All of these things keep people in the dark. They keep people in the dark. They keep them in a state of ignorance. They keep them controlled. Okay, they keep them controlled. And so, as I say, it becomes easy for them to just implement their plans without people knowing about it. They'll tell people the plans, and people will laugh, thinking, "Oh, it's just a bit of silliness. It's just whatever it is." That's not the case. Okay, it's not the case. Let's see what else have we got going on in the chat here. As I say, I'll try and address people's concerns as best I can, or any questions you have. The oil and gas pipeline. Somebody commented in the chat there. Yeah, the oil and gas pipeline serves certain interests, like, let's say, the Genie Energy company near Golan Heights. Now, it has to be stressed that Golan Heights is actually it's considered to be part of Israeli property, but because it's let's call it the border, if you will, the loose borders that were defined in, I think it was 1967, if I'm not mistaken. Please feel free to correct me on that. But because of that, it's disputed in some respects, isn't it? So, in a sense, again, the Greater Israel project can expand those borders. It can expand where the land lies and what belongs to Israel. So, of course, that's going to be part of it. Another part of it as well is the military-industrial complex in America. They're going to, as I was saying before in the last video I put up, they're going to make like bandits. They're all going to get very, very rich out of this. And there's a tertiary concern as well. The primary concern for me, by the way, okay, I didn't get a chance to say this in the last video I did. The primary concern for me is human life. Okay, now, Bombing Syria, even if you remove as many targets as you can and you do this precision striking and all this business, right? There's still going to be loss of life for civilians. Not everybody can get evacuated. Not every, no, that doesn't happen. And bombs kill. There's no such thing as a bomb that doesn't kill someone, by the way. Okay. So the preservation of human life is a principle. It's a sacred principle. You have to learn about this if you don't already. And the people that respect creation, the people that understand the importance of life, they know that they must do everything possible to preserve life. You see, so that's part of the reason why I am so disturbed by this turn of events, as well as many other things that have happened. The previous strike in Syria as well, incidentally, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that will tell you that the first Syria strike that Trump carried out didn't kill anyone. That is a blatant lie, incidentally. That's a blatant lie. I think 11 people, I'm recalling from memory here, so again, feel free to correct me if you do know, but I think 11 people died in that strike. Nobody ever talked about that. Okay, and they were Syrians. So there's no such thing as a bomb that doesn't kill. Right, and especially in that region, which is highly destabilized, it's it's just going to get worse. Quite honestly, it can't be restabilized. It can't be restabilized easily now. You're just going to find what's going to happen is that groups like ISIS will reform in the region. All right. I'm telling you guys this specifically. I know other people will watch it, but you guys in the live chat right now, because these are concerns that you have as well. ISIS will reform in that region by another name, probably. You have to remember ISIS are an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, right? They just have some minor disputes. But another group will form. What the Russians were doing, okay, and I pointed this out, General Joseph Votel correctly explained this some weeks ago now. What the Russians were doing was to fracture the greater group and create smaller terrorist networks, smaller terrorist groups inside Syria. And what this does is it's very clever because it prevents them from becoming one homogenous group that can then carry out singular attacks anywhere. But the Americans didn't understand that. The Americans thought, well, the Russians are trying to create a power vacuum in there. That's not what it was. Now, I'm not suggesting that Russia has pure motives or whatever. They had their own motives. The majority of terrorist activity that happened in the last 50 to 60 years was backed by the Soviets initially and then the Russians, okay? But at the same time, they were trying to, it's a little bit, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie, Sicario. Okay, but it's a little bit like that. The more you can control these out of control groups, the less danger there is generally. Sometimes you have to, this is how they think about it in the CIA and in the SVR and so on. Okay, if you have a controlled terrorist attack, that's one controlled terrorist attack is better than 10 terrorist attacks happening simultaneously that could kill multiple hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people. Okay, so they have a very utilitarian perspective in that respect. Somebody asks, percentage-wise, Heart of the Rebel here is asking, percentage-wise, what is the risk of nukes hitting the US? I was saying earlier, it's probably very, very slim. Okay, it's slim right now. But that could change depending on how events unfold over the next few weeks or months. Incidentally, it should be stressed, this is not a one-off strike. Okay, this is not a one-off strike. Trump pointed out that this was going to be a sustained campaign. But the fact of the matter is there's no coherent policy in terms of what to do in Syria. Now, here's a question for you guys, okay, and you'll know the answer to this as well. What will happen if you remove Assad? Okay, if you go gung-ho straight in for regime change, which Trump is doing now, what will happen after Assad is removed? Is it possible that the same thing might happen, which happened after the toppling of Gaddafi, which happened after the toppling of Saddam Hussein? Is that possible? Because keep in mind, what happened after Saddam was taken out? ISIS formed, didn't they? Okay, they created this Islamic state in that region, and then they flooded into Syria, which is why we're actually seeing the problem in Syria that we're seeing. The CIA created, Okay, this is no joke. I'm not being funny. Again, it's not anti-American propaganda or anything like this. I'm pointing something out. The CIA either knowingly or inadvertently created ISIS through their actions. Okay? And in Libya, again, the same kind of destabilization led to the rise of terror groups there. What's happening inside Libya right now is that people are actually being sold as human slaves for approximately $200, $300. Okay? That's the price of a human life in Libya right now. Whereas once before it was a prosperous country under Gaddafi. It had its problems and it was a hostile state, but it's still no reason to do what they did. And nonetheless, they still did that. So it's very, very troubling what might happen in Syria now as well, because Syria, in a strange sort of way, it was never going to be fully restabilized, but in a strange sort of way, it was beginning to get its act together a little bit. As I said in the previous video, Assad was managing to push back ISIS. He was managing to push back a lot of these rebel groups, and then you got these weapons caches that were brought into the country again by the CIA to try and keep toppling Assad. For some reason, they just despise Assad. I've never quite figured out why that is. I can understand why they hated his father, because his father was kind of like a seriously brutal dictator, right? But in the case of Assad, he's not a nice guy, right? He's a tyrannical leader. I have no doubt he's ordered the deaths of people as well. But in that region, I mean, it's a horrible thing to have to say, but in that region, you kind of need a strong man of sorts, don't you? Because the Islamic regions over time have become used to authoritarian rule. Okay, and the Islamic religion, as it's been interpreted, and the reinterpretation certainly is extremely authoritarian. So that kind of system, if you will, requires a strong man, and Assad's trying to be that. You can't take Assad out and think it's going to work. This garbage that's pumped out, and I think is something I've never figured this out totally. Maybe you guys can tell me, right? Because I'm reading your comments here and some very, very interesting stuff. But maybe you guys can tell me why it is that the European leaders and the European countries and the military-industrial complex and the militaries in these countries keep seeming to think that it's a good idea to export their variant or version of democracy to Islamic countries, Islamic theocracies in some cases, and even countries that are actually relatively secular, like Iraq, like Libya, like Syria. These are the leaders of okay, yes, they're dictatorships, whatever, but the leaders are bizarrely more secular, aren't they? And we can actually look to Iran, by the way, for another example. Before the CIA went in there, I'm sure you're all familiar with Iran-Contra, right? What happened there? You had people that were extraordinarily liberal, right, who are very secular. Women were wearing miniskirts. I don't know if you guys have seen the pictures. They were wearing miniskirts, and it was a very, very liberal society, right? The CIA goes in there and starts trying to topple the Shah of Iran, and lo and behold, they usher in an Islamic theocracy by accident, right? They're not the sharpest tools in the box, the people that work in the CIA. Okay, we're not hiring the best people, let us put it in that sense, right? In government bureaucracy, that never happens. It never happens, okay? This nonsense again about democracy. Incidentally, right, what is democracy? A lot of people don't understand. They think democracy is analogous with freedom. This is not the case. Okay, they've done this in the popular mind. They've merged these two conceptual ideas, but these are not remotely the same thing. Democracy is actually rule by the mob. It's mob rule, because the demos in democracy refers to that, right? So democracy is a sham in a great many ways. It is not analogous directly with the notion of freedom, because the methods of democracy that have been implemented in the West even are controlled systems, right? You've got the left and the right, which are not truly left and right in the purest senses. Okay, you've got controlled mechanisms. You've got a choice between Pepsi and Coke. It's a false dialectic. There is no truth to it, and this is what they want to export to these other countries in the Middle East. It doesn't even work in the West. Why would you think is a good idea for it to be over there? It's lunacy. Mm. America is a constitutional republic. At least that's what it was founded as. I wouldn't say it is still, however. I should correct that. It isn't still a constitutional republic. It is now a democracy. And by the way, you'll notice something very interesting. Many communist countries, okay, many communist countries, if you look at the official names for them, let's take North Korea as an example, right? We call it North Korea, but the proper name for it is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, isn't it? You'll notice that all these, it's like the People's Republic of China, right? It's the same. So all these kind of funny ways of describing something are used when in reality, it's a dictatorship. You see what I'm saying, right? And the same things happen to America. One of the reasons behind this is because the Vatican actually controls America. I haven't told you guys about this yet. I haven't had a chance to really make a video about this, but there are three major power centers in the world, okay? There are three major power centers in the world. I will have to do a proper explanation of this at some point. But those power centers, they're temporal power centers. They have been set up to exist for human civilization. Those are Rome, Jerusalem, and Mecca. Right? They were. By the way, they were invented literally, out of thin air as bastions of whatever. But they are where everything is controlled from. That happens in the world. Okay. Islam is somebody says Islam is a branch of the Catholic Church. Yes and no. Islam is actually a direct derivative of the Talmud. Okay, I tried to explain this as well, but again, people have hard heads; they don't grasp it. Islam is a direct offshoot because if you look at the Islamic texts in the Quran, for example, most of them are ripoffs of the Mishnahs, which are part of the Talmudic tradition, if you will, and they're pretty violent. They're pretty extreme for that reason. Yeah. Let's see. Yep, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems with what is going on here. This whole situation is certainly not good. The Kalergi plan. Well, I will talk about that actually. There's nothing controversial about it in this respect. See, what's happened is these controlled groups again, okay? And I'll call them controlled groups because that's what they are. The controlled aspects of the alt-right, okay? These guys have hijacked everything. So what happens is nobody else can talk about it because this is their role, by the way. This is what the puppet masters want, is for these kind of topics to become so taboo, right? Because they become associated with white supremacy or whatever else, right? So you can't talk about anything. They try and shut people up through these methods about talking about genuine facts, which are not. You see, facts are not concerned one way or another about anything. Facts don't care about this or that, right? Your emotions, your feelings, your whatever. The Kalergi plan, what happened with that is it was drawn up as an idea, okay, and it was kind of a bizarre idea, but nothing was made of it at first. Now, here's one thing that people don't understand. If somebody comes up with an idea and it can be used, it's useful to the people in power, okay, they will adopt it. They will co-opt it. They will usurp it and use it. Okay, it's the same thing with technology, incidentally, right? They can't come up with anything of their own, but if some ordinary guy somewhere comes up with something, in this case, the Kalergi plan, and they see that it can be of advantage to them, they will use it. You see what I'm saying? They will use it. Yeah. Somebody asks, you mentioned North Korea being ironically called a democratic republic, yet you qualify Nazi party being genuinely socialist because of their name. Can you clear this up? Yeah, it's very simple. The Nazi party actually this is the point that I'm trying to explain. Anything that calls itself democratic is by automatic definition with the reinterpretation of what these things mean, automatically socialist. Okay, anything with the name socialist in it doesn't mean that it's not socialist. It means it is socialist. Okay, as I explained before once, the political compass is completely whacked right now. Okay, people don't know where anything stands anymore because the definitions of various words, the etymology of them, and so on and so forth as well, have been misused, mischaracterized, misdefined, not properly defined, that is. And this is why we see a lot of what's going on. And it's been done to shunt everything to the far left. It's been done over the last 150 years or so to shunt everything and everyone in every society over to the left. But you could say, with regards to the National Socialists, that they were to the right of Stalin, certainly, okay, because they had a nationalist component to them, but they were also expansionist, which is a trait of socialism and a trait of, let's say, democracies, okay? So again, there's plenty of stuff with regards to that. Why are we even? Here's my question: why are you asking about that? You should be smart enough to know that already. Okay, we're dealing with the bombing of Syria, and we've got people in here asking about this stuff. Right? I'm happy to give you an answer on it, but I'm just pointing out that yeah, it's let's get our priorities right a little bit. All right. So yes, and Amitai Etzioni, I've talked about him and how he is the puppet master behind the curtain, as it were. This is what's going on. Somebody says no point in talking to the left. They have a different dictionary for the English language. No, that is the biggest, dumbest, stupidest mistake you could make. I am telling you this. I'm sure people will hate this live stream. I have no doubt of that. Okay, but it's my job. It is my responsibility to speak the truth to you. Okay, and here is the truth. Division has been sown amongst you, American citizens, okay, and amongst British citizens and amongst other citizens. Division has been sown in, so that they know this, right? They know this. If you don't get people working actively together to defeat these people in power, what happens? Okay, they win. They win by creating extreme divisions in society. Now, obviously, they can do that with leftist propaganda. But guess what? Here's the thing. Understand this a second, okay? There are far leftists, right? And they're the ones pushing a lot of this message. And they're actually mostly shills, right? And then there are people on the so-called far right, and they're mostly shills. Okay? And those are the people pushing the conversations and the definitions. But see, in the middle of all of that, you've got people on the center left and the center, and then on the center right. And all these people should be communicating with each other. All of these people should be trying to understand each other, have a proper, true conversation or dialogue. Because the left isn't wrong about everything. Okay, this will shock some of you because, people say, oh, your channel is a right-wing channel or whatever. Bollocks, right? My channel is neither right-wing nor left-wing. My channel is simply here to speak the truth. Do you understand that? Okay? So the point I'm making is, the left are correct when they point out, say, for example, let's call them the classical left. They're correct when they're talking about issues with corporatism, because corporate fascism is a true danger to a society. And guess what? You've got corporate fascism. Okay, you've got corporate fascism going on. What do you think is happening with all these military-industrial complex weapons manufacturers? They're corporations. They're the ones that are going to make a lot of money out of wars in Syria and from the war in Iraq and Libya and so on, aren't they? They already made a lot of money through this stuff. You understand that? Okay? Do you understand that? So corporations that run unchecked, that become monopolies, that then become corporate fascist systems are dangerous. Look at what's happening with the social media platforms. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Corporations working in conjunction with government, that is the definition of fascism as proposed by Mussolini. Okay? Do you grasp that? That's the first thing. Now, you have to acknowledge that. So those people who understand that on the left are correct. They're not wrong. They are correct. Okay? On the other side of the coin, right? Understand this, on the other side of the coin, you've got true, proper concerns on the right about overreach by governments, about the abusive nature of governments when they go beyond just simply making sure that they can grant privileges. Instead, what's happened is, see, folks don't grasp this as well. The purpose of government, because I keep getting asked these stupid questions sometimes, not by you guys, but idiots out there just in general in daily life. They ask this nonsense about, what do you think of government? Tell us where you stand on the issue of government. Here's the thing. If you have a government, and this is what the purpose of the US Constitution was, by the way, okay? It's partly about smaller government, but more importantly, it's about the fact that government can't grant you the rights, okay? Your rights, I was discussing this on a recent live stream as well, that I did on Rocking Mr. E's channel. The principles in that were defined by the original constitutionalists pointed out that people like Bastiat, that's correct. Yes, Angry Penguin's pointing this out in the book The Law. They pointed out that life, liberty, and property are granted to you at birth as a birthright. Okay, they are natural rights. They exist before they're enshrined in any constitution, in any law. So government can't grant you those rights. They already pre-exist. Okay? When you understand the complexity of that argument, you can then realize, okay, so if you have a form of government that looks after those rights, okay, and can extend some privileges, maybe, I don't know, okay, maybe it can extend some privileges, okay, but those are privileges, not rights, okay. The mistake that's made, and what tends to happen, is that they use when government starts growing, which it inevitably does. When governments start growing, what happens is that they start expanding into the territory of defining rights. They start insisting that they are the ones that grant rights, not the creator of the universe. If you believe in a creator of the universe, right? They start insisting that. They start insisting that they are an entity unto themselves, who themselves have a right to tell you what you can and cannot do, to tell you which rights you do and do not have. That is what has gone on. And that kind of government, okay, that kind of governance is evil. It is immoral. Okay, it's not a legitimate government. And all governments today, by the way, fit that description. You are living under global tyranny. Okay, when people don't respect natural law, okay, and this goes for a lot of people out there in society, when people don't respect natural law, when they don't respect the sanctity of life for other human beings, it extends somewhat to animals as well, of course, right? But primarily it's about human beings. When you don't accept that or understand that, then you are in gross error in your moral judgments. Okay, you're rejecting natural law. You're rejecting natural rights. And people unfortunately today have no understanding of that. We don't even but again, we know the reasons why all this is the case. We don't even respect children enough to teach them these things in schools. They don't teach civics in schools anymore. Have you wondered why? Okay, because these schools have been turned into indoctrination centers. I did a whole presentation on that. Let's see, what else have we got? So yes, what needs to happen now at this point in time, and I'm going to try and hopefully pull this back to the Syria situation, okay? This is very, very important. I don't want to get too off topic, okay? The people of every country, in terms of the political angles they're coming from, have to unite. You have to bridge the gaps that you have. You have to try at least and do that and come together to oppose this tyranny, particularly what this government is doing in the United States of America right now. Okay? Kids are dying in Syria as a direct result of what has been going on, what the United States of America has caused, what the CIA has caused. Don't tell me that's not the case, right? Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining, right? Kids are dying over there, okay? And adults are dying over there, men and women, innocent people. There are war hawks, okay? A lot of people don't understand the non-aggression principle. There are war hawks that are pushing for, these people that are still supporting what Trump just did because they're Trumpites, okay? They live in a cult of personality, okay? What are they doing? What are they doing in true terms? They are signing off on the idea that governments should go to foreign countries, to sovereign countries, maybe destabilize them, and kill and murder innocent people. How fucked up do you have to be in your moral senses? How fucked up does your moral compass have to be to excuse that? Okay, I'm super serious about this. You are fucked in the head. You are a psychopath if you think that is okay just because you love some particular leader. That's what people in North Korea do. Are you trying to say that you want to become like North Korea? The people that do this kind of nonsense. And then there's the question, of course, with this Syria crisis, presuming it doesn't explode into World War III, presuming that doesn't happen, okay, there's the question of what happens after the country's destabilized. Well, you're going to get a flood of migration occurring, and rightly so, because these people have just been bombed. Their houses have been bombed. Their country's been bombed into smithereens. Where are they going to go? And you get these fucktards. I'm sorry for using this language, but you get these fucktards, again, in the controlled opposition parts of the alt-right, okay, that go, oh, you know what? Fuck the refugees, okay? Wait a minute. Okay, if you're running around, if your country's, and you're not protesting, because these guys don't protest nothing about this, okay? If they're not protesting their own government's actions, if they're not standing right outside the doors of Downing Street or Washington, D.C., in front of the White House and saying, how dare you do this in my name, the bombing of other countries, they have zero right to say, oh, we're going to complain about the fact that refugees are coming in now. What the fuck do you want them to do? Okay? It's a serious, genuine, legitimate question. And I'm not suggesting they should come flooding over or that's a good thing. I'm saying, how about we just stop fucking bombing the countries? Do you know what I mean? I mean, how about we just stop doing that shit? Okay? Maybe that might solve the problem, I don't know. And see, by the way, if those countries are stabilized, okay, and people still want to come over, well, then they're in the moral wrong, okay? Then those people are in the moral wrong, okay? If you've got a stable country and you're trying to leave that, and not just an individual leaving a country, like I myself am an immigrant, quite obviously, right? What I'm trying to say is, if you're coming over in a mass group, in a collective group, to try and change systematically the culture of a country and so on, right? And you're doing that when your own country is perfectly peaceful and there's no wars going on and the West hasn't started a war, then you're in the moral wrong, completely and utterly. You're still in the moral wrong if you're trying to do that anyway, okay? But I'm just pointing out that there's a difference in terms of the motivations, right, of a whole lot of people. And you have to keep in mind, the majority of people that come over, it's not so much the case that it's just the Islamist problem, okay, in terms of the migration crisis in the European countries. It's a very nuanced debate that needs to be had about this properly, quite honestly, on this subject. But really, it's to do with the fact that they're coming over for better economic opportunities in many cases, and they're bringing a lot of the baggage from their own cultures over here as well to the West, which is okay, I guess, in some respects, but it becomes a problem when they're incapable of transcending or integrating into the newer cultures. I've talked about this, right? So those are the things that really need to be watched. But one key thing I'll say as well is that some elements of this refugee crisis were overplayed by the far right. Okay, what's termed the far right. Okay, some elements of it were overplayed, quite obviously, for propaganda purposes. And yeah, you've got to be careful because there's a whole lot of propaganda put out there. There's a whole lot of manipulation of your mind taking place in ways you don't fully understand, maybe, as a person. Okay, so you've got to watch every angle, because everyone, you see, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So if you ever get anyone trying to persuade you about something, the chances are they've got an ulterior motive somewhere in there. Okay, the chances are they've got an ulterior motive. So be wary of that. Okay, always be wary of that. But yeah, I'm just sick to death of these kind of people that to bring it back onto Syria. I'm sick to death of the people that, because people were saying this after my last video. I'm sure you guys saw that, right? People were saying, what were they saying? They were saying, oh, it's okay because Trump's doing this for strategic reasons. He's trying to get attention off the what was it, the Mueller investigation or the Comey thing or whatever else, right? It's just to divert attention. Or they were coming up with other types of ways to explain away the behavior of their dear leader, which was wholly, completely, and utterly immoral. It cannot be. You can't excuse the killing of small children. You can't excuse the killing of civilians. You can't excuse any. You can't excuse the destabilization of countries. Okay, how do you excuse the killing of Gaddafi? Do you think that was a moral right? I'm deadly serious. I mean, there's people that don't think about these things, because they've never truly wrestled with their own conscience. They've never really understood that they are themselves conscious beings. Somebody says force is never okay unless in defense. Force is always okay in defense, yes. But there's a difference between force and violence. And somebody mentioned Mark Passio earlier. He defines this quite properly. He's correct, because violence requires the violation of someone else's rights. Okay, that's what violence is. That's what violence is. But when you have these kind of actions being perpetrated by governments in other sovereign nations, I don't see how you can excuse that. Just again, because of this cult of personality. That's what's going on. So yeah, is it all about Trump looking tough with Russia? I hope not. That's a good question. Okay, well done, Flavius, for asking that question. That's a good question. It could partly be. I mean, there's certainly some truth to the fact that the mainstream media has been, certainly all the outlets, pretty much, even Fox, by the way, to some degree, although it's more subtle in the case of Fox. A lot of people won't notice this, right? But they've been pushing this angle, this narrative that Trump has been colluding with Russia, right? Which may have some kernel of truth to it in one respect or another, by the way. Okay, this is another thing people won't, they don't want to mention this, right? Because it's like, oh shit, the Democrats, they might have been right about something, right? I understand that, but put aside the bullshit partisan garbage for a second, okay? Suppose hypothetically there's a situation where Trump wants to build a hotel in Russia, let's say 15 years ago. It might even be totally innocent, okay? It might even be totally innocent. But if there's some kind of mismanagement of money or something like this maybe in there, that could be misused in an investigation, couldn't it? Okay, so there could be something that could get him into trouble, obviously, which Mueller might uncover. Okay, and the likelihood of that, by the way, is 50-50. Okay, people don't want to acknowledge that. It's 50-50. But whatever the case is with that sort of thing, right? The media pushed this idea that Trump had to prove that he was not colluding with Russia. And then they also pushed the idea that it's a good idea to attack Russia in some way. Okay, so you've got these things going on, and yeah, that may be played into certain events. Um, Mueller hasn't found Jack in 12 months, says Tony Sharks. You're wrong about that. Okay. I hate to tell you this. Okay. You're wrong about that. Mueller did find quite a bit. It just wasn't anything to do necessarily with Russian collusion. Okay. Clinton did so much worse. Yes, that's true. That is also true. Clinton was a bloody nightmare. It's the same thing. It's like Coke and Pepsi. What are you going to do? Right? Is Trump being set up for impeachment with the Syria attack? Well, no. Trump's not being set up for impeachment with the Syria attack. And what's happened is that he is his behaviors, you see, and you can tell this from the decisions he's made, right? Trump's behaviors are brash, rash, and impetuous just by his nature, okay? And so you'll find that he oftentimes displays sort of bipolar characteristics, okay? Without going too much into this, because otherwise people just won't get it. They'll hit that wall again of bias. They won't grasp it. But sometimes a person can be very unstable in their expressed behaviors, and if you catch them the right way, you can manipulate them, right? And that's partly what's at the heart of these decisions that Trump's been making. He's very easily persuaded. Do you remember that thing with the first Syria strike? What was the story behind the story in regards to that, if you recall? Do you guys remember? It was because Ivanka cried. Do you understand? That was enough to make him bomb a country. Okay, that was enough to make him bomb a country. And yes, of course, you have the problem with Jared Kushner, who's very close to Benjamin Netanyahu, and he owns 666 Fifth Avenue, which is a big clue, right, in terms of where Trump's true loyalties lie. Let's not also forget that Ivanka is best friends with Chelsea Clinton, so the Trumps and the Clintons knew each other remarkably well. There's a whole lot of stuff, and it's easy to manipulate somebody who isn't very clever, and regrettably, I don't know if you guys understand this or not, but regrettably, Trump is not the sharpest tool in the box. Okay, he is confused and lost. Yes, Melissa Velozzi says Trump looks confused and lost. He is. He's complete. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's that simple. He doesn't know what he's doing. Before, when the advisors and the generals were there was a reason why people trusted the Trump campaign. And that was because the advisors and generals did know their onions and a whole bunch of stuff, right? But Trump, because he's a moron, quite honestly, in many respects, he started firing people around him that really knew their onions, right? And he started replacing them with Bush-era war hawks and neocons and all this. And lo and behold, we have this crisis in the world now as a result. Here's a true fact for you, by the way. France and Britain wouldn't have launched any missiles if Trump had not ordered it. Okay? France and Britain wouldn't have done that, because the only reason France and Britain never step up is because of part of the NATO agreement. That's another thing. So Trump is actually solely, and I don't say this lightly, but Trump is solely responsible for what is going on here. Okay. As Radical Hippo brings up a pretty interesting point here. He says, he or she, I don't know, someone analyzed Trump's tweet about Assad being an animal, and the language he used is substantially different from his other tweets. I don't know what I think about that, to be honest with you. I don't have an inside knowledge of that. I couldn't really analyze it. It's not an area of expertise for me, but I would say, from what I read, just as a layperson, it did seem to be fairly in sync with his usual tweets. But maybe that's just my perspective, because keep in mind, we all have different interpretations subjectively. I don't know if there's any truth to that or not. I can't say. Yeah. So the Trump picks are this. Another quick thing, again, you guys will know this if you've been with the channel for a fair length of time. The new guys maybe don't or won't know, but Trump, Trump, you see, one of the great problems with him is that he used this phrase. He used this phrase called "drain the swamp." Okay, you'll have heard. Everybody keeps it, "drain the swamp, drain the swamp." I made a total video about this, a very full, intricate, informative video on this subject. Drain the swamp was a phrase that was cooked up by the military industrial complex. The Pentagon actually had a program which stemmed off from something called Project Minerva. If you don't know about that, look it up, okay? I talk about it. I've actually got all the information in that video if you want to check it out. It's all in there. So the military industrial complex actually gave Trump that idea, if you will. And the swamp refers to the ordinary people. Okay. I also put in there a video from the Pentagon in the video that I created, in the presentation that I did. I added the original Pentagon video in there, which explains exactly what's what with regards to that phrase. So please watch that. Okay, you might not like it. I don't care. You can click the dislike arrows as much as you like on any of the videos. I don't give a fuck, quite honestly. Okay, what is important again is the truth, right? And when I put that video up, my God, the pushback I got, you can't believe, because people weren't ready to hear it. Cognitive dissonance kicked in, you know? So that happens. But yeah, so the swamp is, in terms of the way that the military industrial complex viewed it, as I was explaining before to those people that missed the original, the beginning of this stream, I suppose. I was explaining to people that the swamp is the ordinary people. If you want to call them the elites, you can. If you want to call them the internationalists, you can. If you want to call them globalists, I don't care. You can call them whatever you like. The reality is that the black nobility, right, that is the Venetian nobility, are the ones that run this earth. Full stop. That's the full truth of it, okay? And they are Talmudists. Okay, they believe in the Talmud, right? They believe in the Talmudic precepts. No, they're not Jews. You're wrong in thinking that. Okay, people scream this, oh, they're Jews, they're Jews. They're not. You look into the history of where the Talmud came from, and you'd be very, very surprised, because it was ratified, it was created. I try to explain this to people. I tell people this stuff, and they won't listen. You know, they won't listen. Sometimes I wonder, why do I bother? You know, Pope Leo X. Here's a fact for you. Look it up. Pope Leo X in 1520 something ratified the desire on the part of certain Talmudists, right, on the part of people who had a supremacist worldview. He ratified their desire to create something called the Talmud, which totally disinherits, if you will, the books of Moses. Okay, it totally abrogates, if you like, if you want to use that term, it abrogates the original Torah. Okay, these people are not Jews. They were no. They've used certain manipulation techniques to do what they've done. It's a little bit like Islam. Okay. And again, folks don't understand this. When was it? When was the Quran created? Let's see who knows their onions in here. When was the Quran created? I'm waiting if anyone knows the answer to that. See, a lot of people don't know. Okay, in 1925, the Cairo edition of the Quran was published. It was completely different from the other versions that had ever been published in history before. And before that even happened, the caliphate under Uthman, right, created a brand new version of the Quran and destroyed all the old ones. Did you know that? I bet you didn't know that, right? So this particularly insidious form of Islam which exists today is very, very new. That doesn't mean that Islam wasn't imperialist before, by the way, because they were. They attacked the West before. There was Islamic colonization before. That all that stuff happened, right? But that was part of empire building. And make no mistake about it, the West was doing the same thing. One thing I try and explain to people is empire is always, I don't care which empire it is, empire is always, always the enemy of freedom. Okay, see, there's some idiots in here that go, oh, Islam was created 1500 years ago. You don't know fuck all. Okay, you don't know fuck all. You think the shit that you do because there's shit for brains in between your ears. You've been taught this garbage. Do you know where that idea came from that Islam was created 1500 years ago? It came out of Al Azhar University. They created a history out of thin fucking air. And these morons just take it as gospel. Oh, that's because it's the official history. Complete fucking morons. People who think this garbage, they don't know anything. If it's true that Islam was created 1500 years ago, let me ask you this question, okay? Let me ask you this question. Which direction do the qiblas in all the mosques, in the ancient mosques, face? Okay, I'm waiting to read some of the answers here. They don't know. People don't know. Right. According to Islamic tradition, they're supposed to face Mecca, aren't they? But none of the qiblas actually do. Those are the stones that are supposed to face that way inside the mosques. They all face different directions. Every single one of them. Mecca didn't exist before the Saudis created it. Okay? The Kaaba, which means the cube, which refers back to Saturn. Okay? That, oh my God, I mean, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, there's some very clever people in here that know their onions. I'm not going to say who. Some people have got answers right to some of the things I've been talking about. Good for you guys. You've really properly understood what's what. The old Qiblas face Petra, not Mecca. Okay, many of the old Qiblas face Petra. Not all of them, by the way, but many of them do. This new in variation of Islam, where everything's focused towards Mecca, do you know what that does? It creates an energetic power center right there. Why do you think they have people going round and round and round in circles around this cube? Okay, why do you think that's the case? Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked on this. Michael Tessarian has done brilliant presentations on a lot of this stuff. You guys really need to learn from him. Okay, I'm telling you that. He's one of he's yeah, he's one of the only people that I've talked to that I know, right? And I can count the people that know this stuff on one hand. Okay, because I've spent years learning this stuff. I didn't come across Michael Tessarian's work until I actually spoke to him. But I'll tell you something. When I started to watch some of his material, he is 99.99% correct. Okay, Michael Tessarian, yes. So there's a whole lot of things regular people just don't fucking know because they don't read, because this is what the schooling system creates. Anyway, so the point being that the situation in Syria exists because people's minds are easily manipulated, sadly, in a great many ways. Let me ask you guys a question, because I know you guys are decent people with a good moral core. Okay, I know that. Okay, so here's a question: how do you feel about having voted for Trump? How do you feel about having voted for Trump? I'm waiting for the answers here because I think my chat is lagging slightly. Chances are you feel betrayed. Okay, the chances are you feel betrayed, right? Yeah, I'm seeing that now in the chat. Yep. Okay, you feel duped, you feel betrayed, you feel that you didn't vote for this if you voted for him. Okay, part of the reason why I started doing the work I did was in order to help people understand how easily they can be swayed into things. This is why I started teaching people about persuasion techniques, why I recommended books on the subject, okay? Why I recommended people that were experts in the field to explain how all this happens, okay? I was one of the only people, by the way, and there were about five of us, I think. It was myself, Sticks, a few other people that had predicted that Trump would get elected in a public forum. Okay, I actually did that, and so did, as I say, a handful of people. And the reason was because persuasion. There were techniques being used to gear people towards voting for Trump that they didn't know. Okay, there were techniques that were being used to make people vote for Trump, and they didn't recognize this. Now, the clever people. Now, obviously, Sticks has studied the occult. I've studied the occult, right? And any study of the occult actually involves even studying hypnosis, tools of hypnosis, right? To nudge people towards doing things which ordinarily, maybe in the best of minds, they wouldn't do. So it's very easy to see how massive swathes of people will end up voting or whatever else, right? Yes, Kaku2189 points this out. Read Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Yes, that's correct. He's an expert in the field. Tamara says he gave them exactly what they wanted to hear. Yes, yes, it's a sales pitch. It's a sales gimmick, right? Trump told people what they wanted to hear, or at least something that sounded like what they wanted to hear. I guarantee you, by the way, see if you apply a lot of the knowledge that I've given you. Okay, see if you apply a lot of the knowledge that I've given you over the course of 2 years now. And you go back and watch Trump's speeches again, you'll view them in a whole different light. You'll start to see exactly what the hell he was talking about. Because what's interesting is when you're in the know, you realize Trump meant something very different from what people thought he meant. And the drain the swamp thing is just one example of that. Okay. Heart of the Rebel says, I feel like a fool for voting for Trump. Don't. This is something else, by the way. This is so important, okay, that you guys understand this. You were not stupid for voting for Trump. The cleverest people in the world can be manipulated if there are people that know how to do that, to bypass your rational thinking. Don't blame yourself for it. That's wrong. It's wrong to do that. It's not your fault. Okay? It's just unfortunate that human beings are susceptible, you know? Conan the Librarian. I love that name, man. Conan the Librarian says, there will be no political solution, folks. That's true. There won't be a political solution. What this is going to come down to is one of two things will happen. Either the power brokers will end up exterminating everyone, whether it's through nuclear holocaust, whether it's through using AI systems, whether it's eugenics, whether it's manipulating the human genome, whatever it is. And they've been doing all of the above, by the way. Whichever it is, they'll just exterminate the human beings they don't need. They have this worldview that is sort of socially Darwinistic. Okay, they believe that only the strongest will survive, and that they themselves are that, and anyone who does survive must therefore be the strongest and deserves to join them. Right? So it's a very, very kind of sick, twisted way of looking at the world. Or what will end up happening if that doesn't happen is that we will see violent revolutions across the world. We'll see violence break out because there won't be a peaceful solution to things now. That's the thing. There's just no possibility of a peaceful situation. There's no possibility to to address the problems. Yeah. We elected Orange Clinton. Yes, yes. Do you know, that's another thing. I forgot to mention this. You know, people were being told before the American election happened that there would be the danger of war if Hillary Clinton became president, which is true. I don't see how you've averted that with Trump. Okay, I don't see how you would have averted that. Obviously, with what's going on today now, right now. Um, there was no alternative to Trump. Politically, you're incorrect about that. There were many alternatives to Trump. It's just that you couldn't see them. You were not allowed to see them. Okay, that's the thing. I'll give you an example, by the way. Here's a question: was Rand Paul not running? Was Rand Paul not running? What about Ted Cruz? Now, I know he's kind of establishment, but I'm just pointing something out, okay? Was Ted Cruz not running? Was Rand Paul not running in the Republican primaries? You didn't see those guys, did you? Okay? You didn't see them. And on the Democratic side, obviously people are upset that the DNC manipulated things and Bernie didn't get in. But Bernie wasn't the only one running there either, okay? And neither was Clinton. Those weren't your only two choices. Okay? But the parties and the people that vote for them and stuff, you know, they manipulated. Rand is a poor substitute for his father. Actually, I agree with that. Ron Paul is the man, okay? Yeah, he knew his onions, right? But Rand Paul isn't so terrible either, quite honestly. He's an honorable man. He's a man of principle. But here's the thing: they never let the men of principle or the women of principle. There are good women in politics as well, but they never get a chance. You know, they never get a chance. That's the problem. The mainstream media doesn't. Here's how it works. If you don't already know, I think you already know, but in case you don't, right? What happens is the media gives certain people attention and they become very popular. Trump had going for him the fact that he was already on The Apprentice. Now, here's the thing. If you understand what the hell's going on with Trump, as I was explaining before to folks, he didn't know anything. Okay, he's kind of a moron, really, in real terms. But the perception when people watched The Apprentice, most of you guys probably did. I know I did, right? When you watched that, what was the feeling that you came away with? What was the feeling that you came away with? Was surely you guys tell me, okay? You can tell me. Wasn't it the case that when you saw that, it was like, hold on a minute, this guy is a good businessman? Was that not the case? You got the idea that this guy knew a lot about business, he knew a lot about economics, right? If folks watched that, right? Then what happens is you've built up already a hallucination of a person based on the way that the media has portrayed them. Scott Adams, that's correct. Scott Adams also predicted, yes. So Scott Adams, Sticks, myself, a few other people I can't recall. Feel free to throw in their names and I'll absolutely say that they did as well, yes. Infowar, here we go. Yes. Thank you, by the way, to Little Dipper 923. Absolutely 100% spot on. Infowars was pushing Trump. Infowars was pushing Trump. Do you want to blame somebody for this phenomenon, for this problem with bombing Syria? Okay, one person you can blame, that you can lay the blame at the feet of, is Alex Jones. I've tried again to explain this to people. What did I say? What have I been saying for the better part of 2 years now? Okay, what have I been saying? Alex Jones pushed a lot of disinformation, misinformation. Why? To get Trump elected. He sold out. This is a guy who for years told people don't trust government. Magically, overnight, he starts trusting government. Okay? Seriously. There's something people should wonder about. Stefan Molyneux also, yes. Well, the thing with Stefan Molyneux is he was looking at it from a, and I'm not excusing it, by the way, because he was pushing Trump as well, but he was looking at it from the perspective of uh, sort of the utilitarian viewpoint, I guess. You know, it's like maybe we can do something about it, right? Maybe we can do something about the problems endemic with the corruption and all this sort of business. He might have legitimately, and again, I don't know if this is the case or not. He might have been legitimately conned by Trump. Okay, um, but it's also possible, and I'm not discounting any possibilities here, incidentally, right? It's also possible that he knew and he went along with the agenda. So, you know, there's elements about Molyneux that yeah, people should wonder about for sure. Okay, like with anyone, you should never create a cult of personality around anyone. This is why I always tell people on my channel, don't do that with me. Okay, because nobody's your saving grace, nobody's your savior. You are your own savior. Okay. Red Ice, I'm not sure because I don't know much about them. People are asking about that. I don't know. I don't know. Um, if you guys know more about Red Ice, which I assume you do, because I don't know. Is it what is it? A radio station? Is it a podcast? Something like this? I'm assuming. Um, because I don't watch it, because I don't keep up with that sort of business, I can't say. But if you know about it, if you understand that they're using tactics, which may be the case, to manipulate people, then please do illuminate other people about that. Absolutely. What else are we? Yeah. A lot of very divisive people that were frauds. That's right. Yep. Yeah. Plenty of sensible people in the chat. Obviously, very very clever. David Icke is a good man. He is actually, by and large. He's also a little bit, what shall we say, eccentric. Okay, but that's his prerogative. He's an old man now, I suppose. He can be as eccentric as he likes. If he wants to talk about lizard men from Mars, I respect his right to do that. You know, but he did point out, in fairness to David Icke, he did point out that Trump was controlled opposition. Okay, and it takes guts. It takes like I did. Okay, it takes guts. It takes some form of courage, I think, to tell people something that they don't want to hear at a certain point in time. You don't trust David Icke. I didn't say you should trust him. Okay, no one should trust anyone blindly if they don't know them personally. And even then, sometimes maybe you can't trust people. I don't know, right? I don't trust anyone completely either, by the way. So you know, that's up to you guys. Do you think David Icke is clean? What define what you mean by that? Do you mean hygienically? Uh, um, I have questions about David Icke. Okay, myself, I have questions about David Icke, but that doesn't mean that he's not putting good information out there. The only person I would personally recommend, the only two people I would recommend actually, would be Michael Tassarian and Mark Passio. Those would be the only two recommendations I would put out there in terms of people. There are others that I would possibly recommend, but I don't know them well enough. Maybe I've only talked to them once or twice, you know. So that's the thing. Bill Cooper was better than Icke. Bill Cooper was one of the most honest men who ever lived. Okay, Bill Cooper was one of the most honest men who ever lived. Would I recommend Rocking Mr. E? Yes, I would. He's a very good friend of mine's. I would certainly recommend his channel. I would also recommend Semiogog's channel. Both of those gentlemen are great thinkers. They like to question things and play with different ideas, which I think is important. They're not out and out Trumpites or anything like this. You will find that you disagree with them, as you do with anyone on anything, you know. So yeah. But well, people are. Somebody's asking what's going on. We were actually originally talking about the bombing of Syria, And then we got onto the topic of controlled opposition, and now people are asking me to confirm or deny whether other people out there are credible or not. That's what's happening. Jordan Maxwell. What do I think about Jordan Maxwell? I've only come across a couple of his presentations, to be honest with you. Again, I don't know the man. He seems to be putting out some good information. Always use your own discernment, by the way, guys. Always use your own discernment. I can't tell you who you should and shouldn't listen to. You need to make that decision for yourselves. Just always keep an ear open. Don't trust anybody 100% on anything they say. And that doesn't mean that they're controlled or shills or whatever in any necessary sense, but it can always be the case. That's the thing. What do I think of Matt Presti? I've spoken to Matt, of course, on this channel. We did a live stream together. I think he has a lot of the right ideas about a lot of stuff. I would recommend his channel to some extent. But again, I'd have to be more familiar with his work to fully endorse it. But I would say that he is a truthful person. He's as honest a person as anyone you'll probably meet. But again, it's just a question of, there's a difference between a person being trustworthy and the information they might put out there. That's the other thing. So you've got to use your own discernment. Did Trump jump the shark with Syria? Absolutely, he did. Ian McDonald says the God Emperor has no clothes. That's absolutely true. He has now been stripped naked, basically. There are people who are now disparaging Stefan Molyneux. Molyneux is arrogant. Yeah, he is. He is. But you'll find that with anyone who's exceptionally intelligent in some way, shape, or form. This is why I was warning on this channel about the sin of intellectual arrogance. I think that's very dangerous because it fools you into thinking that intelligence equates to wisdom. I talked about that, if you recall. So we are where we are. But the Syria thing, it's going to escalate. It's going to escalate because, as Trump said in his speech, he said that it would be a sustained campaign, and that does mean escalation. So I don't know. I don't know where things are going to go from here myself. Nobody really does. The generals don't. The Joint Chiefs of Staff don't. They're trying to minimize the results of everything that's going on. But, the biggest issue with the US military, okay, or any military, actually, the Russian military or the British military, doesn't matter. The biggest problem with the military is they don't question their orders. One of the points I made very recently on social media was that the military need to disregard orders that are immoral. Okay, and they don't do that. They don't understand. They just went up because there's this notion that's set in stone. Oh, the commander in chief. Well, sometimes the commander in chief is not properly stable as a person. Sometimes the commander in chief may ask of you things that are wholly abhorrent and immoral. So you have to stand up to that. And they didn't. They folded in the face of that. And Trump folded in the face of a lot of stuff as well. What are you going to do? It's the nature of this world, I suppose. The PNAC stuff it's a bad situation. It's a bad situation. Am I sure it's going to escalate? Yes. It doesn't matter that Russian casualties haven't been reported. Have you thought about the fact that possibly the Russians aren't reporting it because they don't want to further inflame the conflict right now? They might be hiding the death count. Have you considered that? The US military is supposed to obey the Constitution, not the president. That is correct. Also, one other point about this is that Trump should have sought the approval of Congress. Trump should have sought the approval of Congress. He didn't. Because what has happened in the US right now is that it's become a lawless country. It's become a lawless country. We've also seen the TPP thing, haven't we? Right? Trump is first. He's like, "Well, I'm getting out of the TPP agreement." Right now, he's talking about getting back into it. Uh, Tefra 1879 asks, "Can you be more specific about escalation?" I actually did go over this earlier on, but for your benefit, I think what's very likely to happen over time is that the situation will deteriorate. Syria will definitely become more unstable. The Russians will at some point retaliate. They absolutely have to in order just to save face on the world stage. Because they've sat back, as I was saying earlier, they've sat back through the destabilization and destruction of Iraq, the destabilization and the destruction of Libya, with numerous situations in Afghanistan and so forth as well. They are not going to sit idly by with this Syria situation. There has to be some kind of response from the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians. There has to be, you know. And the Russians stated outright that if there was any threat to Russian life, they would shoot down or directly counter and target U.S. military assets. So yeah, is Trump's second term dead tonight? Yes, completely. The Trump presidency is dead, by the way. Right, the Trump presidency is dead. There'll be people. See, there's these shills like we were talking about earlier that will. They have nothing better to do. See, there are people out there that have a wide arena and a range of expertise in various fields. Okay, and so they'll maybe they were pro Trump or whatever at some point. See, let's take Ann Coulter as an example, right? Ann Coulter, I don't know, I think she's kind of a liberal, maybe posing partly as a conservative, whatever the case may be. Might not be the case. Might be she genuinely believes in what she's saying, but it seems kind of like a little bit of a parody, doesn't it? But let's say with Ann Coulter, she has a range of things she can do. So she's not dependent on Trump or supporting Trump, so she can be more honest about things. Whereas somebody, and I don't want to disparage here, but the truth is the truth, right? Somebody like Bill Mitchell has no following without being pro-Trump. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, there's a lot of people that will continue to make excuses for Trump. There's people that I used to kind of talk to a little bit on Twitter that are still doing that. They are trying to spin it still. They're still trying to spin the propaganda in favor of Trump, right? They don't understand that they've lost on that front. Okay, they don't grasp that because well, whatever reasons they have. The white helmets are eager to show the media the corpses of Trump bombing as they were to show the fake chemical attacks. Possibly. We'll have to see what happens. Trump ignores Bill Mitchell. Yes, he does. See, Trump, by the way, here's an interesting point for you. You'll notice that anyone who supported Trump has been stabbed in the back. Okay? Anyone who supported Trump has been stabbed in the back. That's no accident. They're going to get to a point eventually, these people, right? These same folks, by the way, were ardent supporters, as I pointed out in the video that I put up, the last video that I put up. These were the same people that were ardent supporters of George W. Bush and his neocon policies that got America into the Iraq War. They're never going to stop supporting Trump. It's futile. Okay, this is my advice to you. If you're trying to convince those people, don't bother. It's futile telling them anything because they have a psychopathic mindset. Okay, they have a truly psychopathic mindset. Don't bother trying to convince them, right? Yeah, 5D chess. Yeah, a lot of people are. Yeah. I was talking about this earlier. All of us in the room were earlier talking about this as well in the chat. There's these morons out there that keep trotting out this 5D chess nonsense with regards to Trump. That's not the case. That's simply not the case. There's a point at which you have to acknowledge reality. Let me just put it that way. People who think this kind of nonsense about 5D chess, 10,000D chess, underwater backgammon, as I said, whatever, magical checkers in the sky, right? They are delusional. It's like believing in the flying spaghetti monster. You're believing in something that's not real. Okay. But yeah, those people, there's no hope for them. There's no hope for them, right? This is why I've been trying to explain to people, it's like hitting your head off a brick wall. I've been trying to explain to people that this is not 5D chess that Trump is playing. This is serious business. They didn't want to hear it. The proof is there to see that Trump is a complete idiot and a moron, and he's got shit for brains. A lot of people got outraged about that. Okay, they hate me for saying that. I'm not kidding you. They hate me for saying that. You tell me where the smarts are, okay? Those people that think that, right? Or even just you guys that are here in the chat, you tell me where the smarts are in bombing the shit out of Syria. How does that help America or ordinary Americans? How does that help ordinary Americans? You know? But they don't think about that. They don't think about that, And then you get these partisan morons. I've had to, deal with these kind of people, these partisan morons that are like, well, Trump's the last hope, the GOP is the last hope. Let me ask you a question. You know these child abusers that exist that people talked about, and they're correct to talk about them, that existed in the DNC. Do you not think that the GOP is filled with them as well? Okay, serious question. The RNC, the Republicans, the Republican Party is filled with the same kind of people. Right? You're making excuses for immoral people if you're doing that, incidentally. It's the same thing with Trump. I was saying this earlier. We all were saying this in the chat earlier as well, that people are doing this with Trump. Trump has just committed an immoral act. He has bombed a sovereign nation. It's quite possible he has most likely killed people in this attack. Because there's no such thing, as I was saying earlier, there's no such thing as a bomb that doesn't kill. You can't evacuate every civilian out of an area. You can't evacuate every military person in an area. It doesn't work that way. Putin is friends with Erdogan. If Assad goes, Turkey's future jihad against Israel will be supported. Maybe, I don't know. Turkey's a strange one, honestly. Erdogan is a strange one. That's very hard to predict. See, I don't like to step outside the bounds of what I know. There are limits to what I can know and what I can say and what I can extrapolate or deduce, right? What I can tell you about Turkey is that Erdogan wants to reestablish his own caliphate. That much is true. He is a totalitarian leader. That's also true. He wants to destroy Europe. That's also true. But strangely, in a weird sort of quirk of fate, he's ended up being a part of NATO, which is really bizarre. And at the same time, he's best friends with the Russians, which is equally bizarre. He's got his own agenda in there. God only knows what Erdogan is going to do. So I don't even want to speculate. Putin is pragmatic. Yes, he is. He is. Putin is a very clever guy. Anyone who tells you that Putin is an idiot doesn't know anything about him. I have studied. See, I spent my working professional life studying people like Vladimir Putin and even Putin himself. I know quite a lot about the man. He is one of the most shrewd operators you will ever find. Okay, very, very intelligent man. Hopefully he can use that intelligence to deter the war hawks from escalating further, even inside Russia, because Russia has its own war hawks, by the way. See, this was something I was telling a friend of mine recently. Most people, when they think about a country, they have a low resolution image of that country. Okay, they have a low resolution image of the country, and they don't know enough about it. And because of that, they think of it as some sort of one singular conglomerate. The truth is, Russia, it has different people who believe different things, just like all countries do. There are people that are war hawks, that are pro-war. There are people that are anti-war. So there are these power struggles which go on inside countries themselves. So it's not just like Russia is just this one big, glob or something that's just doing its thing and that's it. There's obviously the government agendas that continue, but yeah, there are different powers trying to do what they want to do inside Russia, even. Yeah, the solution is not political. That is correct. Kaku2189 says, are people finally aware of the Russian mob? Here's an interesting point, actually. That's a good question. The Israelis, some time ago, and I didn't get a chance to really go into this in depth when I talked about it on other social media platforms. The Israelis formed an alliance many years ago now with the Solntseevskaya Bratva, which is the biggest mafia organization inside Russia. They joined with them because the guy who and this is not I tried to explain this to I actually did a presentation on this. The guy who's in charge of the Russian mafia, guess which religious denomination he belongs to. Okay, guess which ethnic group he happens to be a part of, right? And then you'll understand why Israel, because I'm not saying, because with the way things are going these days, plenty of things that you can't really get into the meat of. Catholic, no, he's not Catholic. Some people have got it. He's not Orthodox Christian. Yes, 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 yes. I'm saying yes to several answers that I'm seeing. So those guys run the Russian mafia. They run pretty much the Russian government to a great extent. They do control Putin himself. But Putin also has his own ideas about stuff as well. It's not like, he unlike Trump, he's not a total puppet. And that's the one advantage there. But as I was saying, Israel formed these links with them. And then what happened was, because Israeli interests were threatened by Russia, these are power plays that are made on the world stage again. It's just on a larger scale. The Israelis decided to turn on the Russians. They betrayed the Russians. So who knows? Putin has the advantage in that he is still firmly in control of the Russian government. Yes and no. Actually, the Russian mafia controls a lot of the Russian government, I think you'll find. Trump is no longer in control of the deep state, is pulling string. Yeah, the deep state. This, I've got to say something about that, okay? I've got to say something about that. This term that you're using about the deep state, who told you about that? Where did that come from? How did that get into your head that there is a thing called the deep state? Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm asking you a question. Okay, who told you there was such a thing as the deep state? See, this language is used to cover up the real perpetrators of the world's problems. Okay, the real perpetrators of evil. There is no deep state in the sense that it's used. Okay, there is no deep state in that specific sense. What you do have, right? What you do have are power brokers who are actively manipulating entire governments, entire militaries, entire countries. Okay, that's what you have. That's correct. The dashing rogue got it 100%. The person that started this notion of the deep state was Alex Jones. And that was to take heat off the real power players. And I'm not, I'm not going to beat around the bush on this. Some of them happen to be Israeli. Okay? It's as simple as that. So, Yeah, the Infowars, for those of you that have just joined us, I guess, I'm recapping here in that respect. We've already talked about this, but Infowars is controlled opposition. They pushed propaganda for Trump. They pushed propaganda for Trump. Okay. And I was talking about Alex Jones explaining this to folks that for years he was anti-government. Suddenly, magically, mysteriously, he becomes pro-government. Okay, just because Trump's in office. I mean, what is that all about? Do you see what I'm saying? And people like Alex Jones have gotten the world into this state because he persuaded, at the very least, he persuaded some voters to vote for Trump, didn't he? Right? What happened now? Well, now we're at war with Syria, possibly with Russia, possibly with Iran, possibly with the Chinese. So, you know, uh, you're well aware of who controls the deep state. No, you're still using the phrase deep state. It means fuck all. Stop using it because this is a control mechanism. Okay. And it's just designed to create more division. Okay. Alex Jones has done nothing but sow seeds of division. He's no different from the Young Turks, by the way, who are far leftist, right? He's no different from them. People keep ignoring China. Why? Probably because the Chinese, their influence has been waning, most likely. Their influence has been waning because of their economic situation. They are in dire straits in some respects economically because they've been too thinly spread out. Okay, they've been too thinly spread out. The Chinese, I don't know if you're aware of this, wrecked communist, but the Chinese have been trying to take over Africa. They've been expending a lot of money and resources in doing that because they think that that'll pay off in resources. There's also the One Belt, One Road initiative. They've been buying up land and seaports in Pakistan and also in other various countries. They've invested something in Iran. They've obviously also been involved in giving a lot of weaponry to North Korea as well. So they're too thinly spread. Dirk Diggler says, interesting name, by the way. I think the CIA Pentagon is infiltrated by dual citizens. Yes, I see what you're saying with that. Yes, yeah. I think what you'll frequently find, interestingly enough, by the way, there are people. Here's what makes me laugh quite often. There are people that call themselves politically Zionist. Okay. And I'm not using that term in a defamatory sense. Zionism, understand this, it's not anti Semitic to talk about this. And people will try and convince you it is. It's certainly not. Zionism is a belief, it's a political ideology. It's a supremacist political ideology, okay, to some degree. And there are people that are Christian Zionists. Are you guys familiar with this? There are people that are Christian Zionists. And you have to wonder, what kind of pot are these people smoking? Did someone put LSD in their water? But these are the kind of folks that support the same agenda because from their perspective, they get their orders straight out of Rome. And as I pointed out earlier, for those of you that missed it, Pope Leo X created the Talmud, which is where a lot of the Zionist beliefs come from. Okay? So there's a lot to it. Yeah. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Sun Tzu, The Art of War. That is correct. That is absolutely correct. And this is what these power brokers have successfully done over a number of generations. They've certainly done that. It has to be said, though, they lost power for quite a period of time. This is something else. See these Alex Jones type people, right? This is why I despise Alex Jones. He lies through his teeth about everything. Okay, and this is to dissuade people from learning the truth about anything. There was a point in history, I think probably about 500 years, give or take, where these people that had gotten to power through various means did not have power. Okay, there's a point in history where they didn't have power at all. They lost it because people of moral character started to oppose them. Okay, people of moral character started to oppose them. And then this agenda got restarted in the last, I would say, 200 years roughly, since 1850, 1860 ish. I don't know. How long is that? That's roughly 200 years, I think, just over, maybe. But yeah. So I'm very tired. I can't do these numerical calculations because it's 5 in the morning here, and I have been up for 3 days, literally, and I'm in my pajamas right now, believe it or not, as I'm doing this. But yeah, so um, there's a lot of stuff that people need to get familiarized with if they really want to have an in-depth understanding of things. But Alex Jones has pushed his own agendas to again throw people off the scent. M99 says, here, please take some of my blood-stained petrodollars. I love your channel. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. I appreciate your sincere comments there. Blood-stained petrodollars. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Right. I also appreciate the super chat as well. Jones is just a trend hopper. Well, I don't want this to turn into an anti-Alex Jones, stream or something like this. I don't want that to be the case. I'm just pointing something. I was pointing something out about Alex Jones, and you guys have gone on for about an hour ripping into the guy. Yeah, he's a disinformation agent. What do you want me to say other than that? Unless you just want to commiserate with each other about this, But yes, we've got Alex Jones. Yes, the dashing rogue. Thank you for the super chat there as well. Alex Jones had Dugan on his show, a Satanist that has connections to Spencer, and yes, and that was the nail in his coffin. Absolutely correct. Alexander Dugan, okay, is one of those people that tried to push Vladimir Putin into joining the New World Order completely and wholly, because he was part of it. Okay, and this is the guy Alex Jones has on his show. Okay, see, he was the architect of the Eurasian project, and that was to form a one world government. It was to do what they set out to do years ago. I've explained all of this on my channel. You see, what happened with Russia was the fall of the Soviet Union didn't really happen. Okay, it didn't really happen. The Cold War never ended. Okay, not for 1 second. In point of fact, what happened was that the fall of communist Soviet Russia was faked. Okay, that's what happened there. And the reason behind that was because they were sure they would get an absolute foothold, they would assume total control of Russia again. That was the Russian mafia that set that up, by the way. I did a whole presentation on that. So this stuff has been going on inside Russia. The Hermit's tablet says, Michael, do you remember when the late Bill Cooper caught and exposed Alex Jones back in 2000, spreading lies about nuclear missiles going off due to the so-called millennium bug? That is correct. Alex Jones has done nothing but spread misinformation. But again, I don't want this to be an anti-Alex Jones stream. I was just saying that he pushed this pro-Trump propaganda, which caused a lot of people to vote for this guy. Very, very dangerous stuff. Ian McDonald, thank you very much for the super chat. The folly of the Christian Zionists is that a lot of them like to say how bad the Catholic Church is. Yes, that's true. That is true. But also, the Catholic Church is pretty bad. Okay? Don't get into don't make the mistake of thinking that the Roman Catholic Church, we're not talking about the Catholic Church in a proper sense, right? Which is to say Catholics. We're not talking about people who believe in Catholicism. We're not even talking about people who are Christians here, right? But the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, is part of the Flavian Piso dynasty. People react very badly when I try to tell them the truth about this stuff. They don't want to hear it. But all these pedophile scandals, these child abuse scandals inside the Vatican, which Pope Benedict covered up, the most recent Pope Francis covered it all up. They've been apologists both of them were apologists for Islamism. Pope Benedict was part of the Hitler Youth. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about this. There's a lot of stuff about the Roman Catholic Church as an institution. It was an extension of the Holy Roman Empire, which itself is where all of this really kind of fundamentally began in Europe. Okay, the Holy Roman Empire was the New World Order, incidentally, if you don't already know that. Okay, the fasci that were the symbols that were used. You need to look into this stuff if you don't already know it. What are your thoughts on Albert Pike and his 3 World War letter? I actually did a full presentation on that. You can watch it if you want. Yeah, my thoughts are out there for people to know on that subject. So, yeah. What do you think the next moves of Russia will be? Asks Little Dipper 923. It's hard to tell at this point in time because Russia's military doesn't want a conflict. They don't want World War III, okay? And the Russian military and the American military have a communication system, okay? They have a communication system which allows them to try and minimize risks. So they don't want war. The problem is not... Now, you have to understand something else as well, and I haven't been able to get around to doing a proper presentation on this. All militaries around the world are satanic. Okay, you have to understand that first and foremost. Does that mean they are inherently, therefore, evil? No. Okay, this confuses people. And I don't want to confuse you with this. I want to help bring clarity in regards to this. You see, because militaries are by default pragmatic and they are part of the apparatus of the state, they are inherently an evil, but they might be a necessary evil in some respects, if you see what I'm saying. It doesn't excuse any of their actions. They can't possibly be moral, but they can sometimes try to do the right thing or the least bad thing, if you want. Okay? And so the Russian military won't do it. But the problem is that the militaries are not... Like, take a look at America, right? The American government, and not just not the American government, but the America, the country, okay, the United States of America is under a military junta right now. Okay, the military is adversarial by nature. That's correct. Yes, somebody pointed that out in the chat. The military junta, however, couldn't control Trump. Do you realize how dangerous that is? Okay, they couldn't control Trump. Trump's a politician now. He has been for 2 years. Well, a year actually. Let me correct that. Since he was inaugurated. That was last February, I think. Okay, so the country of America wasn't able to prevent this launch on Syria. The US military couldn't prevent this launch in Syria because a politician, a nutcase, quite honestly, launched the missiles. He gave the order to do that. And the military, unfortunately, are nothing but order followers, right? So they just go along every time, okay? Every time. This defense didn't work in Nuremberg. It shouldn't work now, okay? We were only following orders is not a legitimate position. I don't care who you are, okay? So, yeah, I mean, the militaries don't want war, but even inside Russia, keep in mind there are a lot of bought and paid for politicians. Some are owned by the Israelis, some are owned by the Russian mafia, some are owned by the CIA. So if they push for it and if they end up with the power to be able to push the button, so to speak, right? That's a metaphor. There's no actual real button, incidentally. But if they decide to do that, yeah, you know, what can because the Russian military, the only advantage as I was the only advantage is that the Russian military, as it used to exist under the Soviets, had people that were still moral actors. They refused on several instances. See, as I was explaining earlier, and I know a lot of you just come into the chat here, but I was telling the viewers earlier that during the Soviet era, during the Cold War, we almost had the launch of nuclear weapons 3 or 4 times, both in America and over in the Soviet Union. In 3 instances that I know of, it was Russian military personnel that decided not to follow those orders that saved everyone from being nuked. Okay, they stopped World War III from happening. So if there are still moral actors inside the Russian army, which I think there are, they will probably not go ahead with it. Yeah. What about China? It's hard to say with China. Whatever Russia does, China will follow suit. The timeline is going to start after the next few years. Yes, the timeline for World War III, the countdown has now begun, by the way. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The countdown for World War III is on. What will China do? I don't know. Will they? It depends, because Russia and China have a very, very weird relationship, right? Because contrary to popular belief, the Russians never really fully turned away from communism. Okay. Excuse me, my voice is starting to go. The Russians never turned away from communism. So they agree with the Chinese, they help each other, they support each other's militaries, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, the Chinese have their own agenda. They want to be the top dogs. So will they follow through and follow Russia wherever Russia goes? It's possible. It's possible. It's also quite likely. But at the same time, it may not happen. This is a question of probabilities, right? All we're doing here, really, you guys and myself, are measuring the probabilities of what may happen, what may not happen. Right now, it's more likely than ever that World War III will occur. The timeline, as I say, has been started for it, as somebody in the chat also pointed out. That's absolutely correct. But what will emerge from this, exactly how events will unfold, is difficult to say. Who will be the first to launch? I don't know. Yeah, it's see a very dangerous precedent has been set today with this launch on Syria by all the NATO countries. The Russians have an automated defense system. They only have 10 minutes to stop it. Very dangerous, says Chris Wilton. That is correct. I have tried to point this out to people. They don't seem to understand it. It's not just automated, it's a dead hand system. Because I have an intimate knowledge of this thing, right? Just like I have an intimate knowledge, and I don't talk about it publicly because obviously I can't, right? But I have an intimate knowledge of the way that the system works inside America as well for launching the nuclear warheads. The Russian system is designed to be tripped by any kind of seismic activity that is unusual, which is why the Russians have to keep monitoring it constantly. Any kind of air activity that is if they sense that, what I mean by that is not just air activity like a plane wanders into their airspace, but more the case that, say, it drops some kind of ordnance, right, is designed to sense that. It's a very, very clever system. It's a kind of an AI system. It will detect any kind of perceived threat and launch. The American system doesn't work that way, by the way. The American system requires human approval. Mike, speak about Joel Skousen and Jeff Nyquist. I don't know who they are, so I can't. I wish I could. Wait a minute. Actually, Joel Skousen, wasn't he on the Alex Jones show or something? Somebody in a previous stream mentioned that. I don't know. If that's the case, then I would stay away from people like that try to tell you things. Remember the Doomsday Machine from Dr. Strangelove? Well, it does feel a little bit like we are living through that right now, doesn't it? Russia will be the first to launch, but it will be caused by provocation. That's correct. That's actually correct. Yes. Something will be done to provoke Russia. That much is certain. Well, something's already... What am I saying? Jesus, I mean, something's already been done, right? But their buttons will be consistently... They'll keep pushing the buttons the Russians' buttons. Why? Because America can't launch first. That is true. There was a presidential decision directive that was signed under Bill Clinton that prevents America launching on warning, which means that if they think that there's going to be an attack on American soil, America can't launch first. That attack has to be allowed to happen, which is really bizarre. But America only has the power to retaliate with its nuclear weapons. So they have to make the Russians act first, unless they want to completely ignore if the military generals, which might happen as well. It's actually, let me correct what I was saying slightly. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that the law will be totally disregarded in that regard. Okay? Because look what's happened already. Trump didn't seek congressional approval, even though he should have, for these coordinated strikes with other NATO nations. And the British PM, Theresa May, didn't consult Parliament either, which is illegal in both cases. Okay? But because of that, because they're disregarding the rule of law, perhaps America, if they can't provoke the Russians, here's the thing that I'm thinking as well, just in the back of my mind, if they can't provoke the Russians, they might just go all out and actually launch anyway. You see what I'm saying? They might just want direct, like, think about it. We've got good generals, okay? We've got good generals in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, okay? General Dunford knows what he's doing, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, okay? You've got General Votel, knows his onions, great. Also, they generally tend to be fairly sensible. The problem is, those guys can easily be replaced because they serve at the president's pleasure. I'll give you an example, an analog of what I'm talking about here, okay? No, you're wrong in assuming that the US won't launch first, direct communist, right? in the events that I'm talking about, because here's what could happen. So say, I mean, you're generally correct, but let me say this as a hypothetical scenario. Say you have these good generals inside the military, okay, inside the Joint Chiefs of Staff, right, inside the command centers, taken out and replaced with their own people. What happens then? Do you think they're going to care about the law? Do you think they're going to care about the consequences? Of course not. To give you an analog, as I was trying to do earlier, take a look at Admiral Kirby under Obama, right? This guy was a pencil pusher. He had no military expertise whatsoever. He was a total fuck up right across the board, and Obama constantly had to countermand what he was saying, right? Because Obama wasn't an idiot, contrary to popular belief. A lot of stuff that people have been told about a lot of things isn't necessarily entirely true, incidentally, in the propaganda. But here's the point I'm trying to make. That if you end up with a room full of General Kirby's, okay, if you end up with a room full of them, then you're going to have very serious, Admiral Kirby, then you're going to have very serious problems because they won't care. Global Vortex says, I'm talking out of my behind. There will be no world war. Get real. Too much to lose. You, sir, are a moron. It is as simple as that. You're a moron. You do not understand what the hell is happening. Okay, you have no conception. You have no conception of where we are right now in terms of the geopolitical situation. Get the fuck out of my room. I don't even want to talk to you. You're that idiotic. Okay? Get out of my chat. And unsubscribe. I want you to unsubscribe. Go away. I won't put up with your kind of bullshit, quite honestly. Right? Because listen to me, right? The rest of you, ignore this idiot. The rest of you understand something. There are people that will say these are the same kinds of guys, by the way, right? These are the same kinds of guys, same kind of people that were saying that Trump is playing 3D chess, 4D chess, 5D chess, 9,000D chess, 10,000D chess, underwater backgammon, you name it. These were the same apologists that were saying nothing will happen in Syria. Trump won't launch in Syria. These are the same people that were telling me this. Okay, these were the same people that were telling me that bullshit. They're the same people that said Trump won't sign the omnibus bill because he's too clever. These are the same people that said Trump won't originally strike Syria. Do you know what I mean? And these morons are telling me that I don't know stuff when I've predicted accurately and correctly exactly what would happen every single time. What are you? What the fuck's wrong with you? You know, these people don't understand shit. They're tripping on their own egos. Interdimensional minesweeper, exactly right. These people think, oh, nothing. Yeah, yeah. Trump's such a genius. He's a genius. He's so remarkable that we can't tell what he's doing. Right? Fucking ridiculous. You know, they'll peddle this bullshit left, right, and center. They're not. All they're doing is furthering the propaganda of the very thing that they say they're against. I mean, what can you do? It's blackmail. It must be. No, it's not blackmail. This is not blackmail. Trump is not being blackmailed. He has been a part of this from day one. Okay. That's going to be hard for a lot of people to swallow. They don't want to know that. Okay. They're going to be upset with me for saying that. They're going to call me names. As you can see, many people have done already. I don't give a fuck. You can do that. You can dislike the video. You can thumbs down it. Whatever you want to do, man. It's a free country. It's a free world, right? Well, not anymore, but it used to be, right? So say do what you like. It doesn't change the price of potatoes. Okay, it doesn't make the truth become an untruth. So yeah, you've got a lot of manipulation. This is the point. You've got a lot of manipulation, and people are just being suckered left, right, and center. Trump married off all his kids to Zionists. That is correct. M99 has hit the nail on the head. Okay, he's hit the jackpot. He or she has hit the jackpot. I don't want to assume your gender, incidentally. Okay. What should we do? Sink into a pit of despair now? No, prepare. I'm not talking about the prepper kind of Alex Jones garbage, right? Fuck that. That doesn't work. Prepare by building bridges with people who are your political opponents. Repair the social fabric. Repair your own spirit inside yourself, your heart and your soul. You need to reclaim those. Okay? Then you need to start working on ways to ensure that you and your family somehow manage to remain safe through whatever comes, okay? As best you can. It's possible it may be unavoidable. I don't know, okay? There's things I don't know. I'm willing to tell you that's the case. If I don't know something, I'll say I don't know something. But uh, as the only piece of advice I can give you, as far as my own wisdom takes me, right, limited as it is to reinforce the strength of your own spirit. Okay? Do right by other people as best you can. Love your friends, love your family. Keep those bonds strong. Build your community. Okay? And try and inform those that want to be informed. Leave the ignorant to their own fate because you can't change them. Okay? That's my opinion. That's my feeling on it. And don't worry about it. Okay? Don't worry about it. If we can't, we've learned something very interesting, which is nothing can be done politically to change the situation. Right? It's possible a violent overthrow of the governments of the world might change things. I don't know, but even that is a risk. It could be the case that doesn't change anything at all. You know. Somebody says something very interesting. This is actually a very good point I'd like to address in the chat. If Trump was under the control of the New World Order from the start, there would have been no need to keep him under the four-prong attack. That's wrong. You're not understanding the bigger picture here. Okay, I'll tell you about it now. What happens? Here's a question for you. Psychologically, right? What happens when you, as a person, see someone being berated unjustly? What happens when you see someone being berated unjustly? It makes you think that that person is an underdog, does it not? Inside you, it evokes this feeling that there's a wrong that's been committed and that you need to right it. Okay? Is that not so? You want to defend them, don't you? You want to support them. Well, what happens? There's a reason I'm asking you this. What happens if the media, right, attacks Trump constantly? What happens if the media attacks Trump constantly? There's a question for you. What happens if the media attacks Trump constantly? It makes him look like the underdog and people support him in greater numbers. It's psychology 101. Okay, it's psychology 101. Right? That's how you manipulate people. It worked on a lot of people. Don't blame yourself for it. If you were taken in by this, don't blame yourself for it. It's not your fault. You weren't at the time familiar with manipulation techniques. There's a lot of very good questions. I don't think I'll have time to really get to these because I want to try and keep the stream fairly short. I've already gone over 2 hours now, but good questions that are being asked here. Is it a possibility that we will see the implementation of the strategies spoken of by Stanislav Lunev? Yes, but he wasn't the only one to point these things out. He was correct, but there's a lot of other people that said the same sort of thing. Alexandra asks, "Do you think Hillary would have been a better choice?" No, there was no choice. It's the illusion of choice. Okay, there's not a chance in hell that I would have, in any way, shape, or form, supported the Clinton platform. Right? Because think about how immoral and corrupt the Clintons are. They were smuggling drugs in and out of the country. Right? They were part of Operation Fast and Furious. The armed militants, Islamist militants, they set up Project Pelican, Operation Pelican that I talked about. Nobody else has even talked about that. If, by the way, on Alex Jones, we were kind of digging at Alex Jones earlier. If Alex Jones was truthful, he would have talked about Operation Pelican and Gulf Tainer to expose the Clintons' real actions. He didn't do that. I tried to do that. Nobody cared. But, these things happen. What are you going to do? So, yes, lots of stuff that is unfortunate, that has gone down. Look, you're going to feel low about a lot of the things that have happened. You're going to feel, as many people said earlier, you feel betrayed, right? And you'll have come to your senses on a lot of stuff as well, right? That's a good thing. It's a good thing. Don't lose sleep over this right now, okay? Because we're not at immediate crisis point. That's what I'm trying to explain to people. That's part of the reason why I'm doing this stream. We're not at immediate crisis point. World War III is not going to happen tomorrow, okay? So don't think that. Just start doing what you need to do in order to make sure, as I say, that you don't get squashed under the boot heels of what's coming. Okay, that's very important. You think Europe will take a hit again? That's probable. Yeah. Yes, there's going to be another wave of migration, of course, right? But again, what I would say is why would you blame the migrants when we're bombing Syria? If they're migrating from Syria specifically, why would you blame them? If you run around destabilizing countries, you can't put that on the people that are trying to escape from war-torn regions. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, yeah. Somebody says they'd like to see me elaborate on archaic religions in our current political world stage. I think I've actually pretty much done that. Actually, right? I think I have kind of covered the topic fairly well in regards to various religions over time. Some of the videos got flagged that I put up. Some of the videos ended up in limited state. Some of them got taken down. So what I'll probably have to do over time is to re-upload them or maybe put them on BitChute or something, and see how that goes. I haven't had the time to get around to doing that, but I have tried to cover these things as much as I can. Anyway, I think what we're going to do is call it a day on the live stream because my voice is starting to go, and it's 6 in the morning here, pretty much. But try to remain calm through this. Keep your sanity. Keep your marbles. Okay. Oh, quick question. Any words on admiralty law before you go? Yes, admiralty law is basically the same thing as commercial law, and it's not law; they're statutes. What happened? Excuse me. Hopefully, I won't die in the middle of trying to explain this. What happened was that there was a conflation between what we would truly recognize as the law, let's say criminal law, and civil law, which is admiralty law, which is commercial law. So that kind of stuff has happened, right? And yeah, I mean, that's a whole presentation in and of itself, to be honest with you. I might get around to that. We'll see. At any rate, I'm going to leave you guys to it and wish you all a very good night. But thank you very much for tuning in to this stream. And thank you very much also for your comments, your questions. They're always welcome in most cases, unless you're going to get the odd troll, the odd idiot, the odd moron that doesn't know anything, and those kind of people I disinvite. If you're an idiot, I don't want you on this stream. That's my take on it. But most of you guys on here, virtually everyone almost actually, has been very, very sound in their knowledge and their understanding and their spiritual awareness as well. So I really appreciate that. At any rate, take good care of yourselves. God bless every single one of you, and have a good night's rest, hopefully.